Welcome everyone to the actual story of actual play. I'm your host, as always, Jake, and today I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by the man in the chair, the man in the milk tub, Taylor Moore.
Hey, the tub is warm. Come on in, everyone.
So, Taylor, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I'm so excited to have you. And if you could just start by giving a quick intro of who it is you are, what it is you do, Fortunate Horse, all that good stuff.
Sure. So I founded, and I guess I'd call myself the creative director of Fortunate Horse, which is a podcast studio, and we make what are called actual play shows. Worlds Beyond Number, Rude Tales of Magic, Fun City, Those Stars of Space, and who knows what else.
Awesome. Really just want to jump into the meat and potatoes of all your shows.
I hate salad.
I mean, listen. Salads.
We all know
it. Some people just pretend to like salad to be cool, but we all know that that's not what it's about.
No.
All of your shows, I had the pleasure of giving each one a couple episodes of listening.
Thank you.
to do prep for this interview. And all of them focus heavily on storytelling, right? It's storytelling through audio. It's actual play shows. So I want to know, how did it begin, right? How did you get started being interested in storytelling, specifically audio-wise?
Well, I was I sort of came into the creative world via the comedy scene in New York many years ago. And I was one of the first people in the city who tried to build a podcast, like a comedy podcast studio. So many years ago, my day job was I was a nanny. I took care of a bunch of children for a family in Manhattan, while they were at school, I was at home trying to build a comedy podcast network. I was really involved in the UCB Improv Theater at the time. That's where I met Brennan and a lot of the people that work on Fortunate Horse shows now. And it didn't work out. I mean, we were making 6 shows out of my closet. We were doing a lot of stuff, but nothing really landed. So I've been enamored of podcasting for a long time. I remember listening to podcasts before the iPhone came out. I mean, before, that whole ecosystem really exploded, I was just downloading episodes of what was called The Sound of Young America at the time, which is now Bullseye with Jesse Thorne, who runs Maximum Fun, who hosts The Adventure Zone, which your fans will know. Listening to his shows and just was completely enamored of podcasting and just the possibility of it. I really saw it as this incredible space. But my first attempt at a network didn't really land, even though we made some incredible stuff. Most things fail. So then I went away and started working at a Kickstarter, the crowdfunding website, and just really got a crash course in the creative economy, the independent creative economy, and met so many creators from all sorts of categories, all over the world, all sorts of things. And it really made me sort of renew my interest in maybe doing something professionally. And of course, I was playing D&D all the time. I mean, I was playing all sorts of games. I was playing Shadowrun games, I was playing D&D, whatever was going on at the time, I was playing and DMing and everything. And then, I started getting these ideas about what might be possible. I was listening to Harmontown, hearing Spencer Crittenden, run that very famous game that started as almost a joke and became this, its own TV show. And then I heard Balance. I heard, the first arc of Adventure Zone, and that just completely blew my mind. And at the time, I was in a D&D game with Brennan Mulligan. He was my DM. And so I went to him and I said, look, buddy, we have to do this. You are too good at this. You have to start the show. But I didn't really quite know enough of what I was doing at the time to really convince him to start something with me. I didn't really have, I was out of practice. So, and then, Brendan moves off to Los Angeles, and I stay in New York. And in the intervening years, I did make a return to podcasting and develop these other shows. My first show in development was Fun City with Mike Rugnetta. It's this cyberpunk noir Shadowrun show. And then the next was Rude Tales of Magic with, Branson Reese is DM, who I met through just like producing comedy stuff, and Tim Platt, who I met. He was, I used to produce a stand-up comedy show, and Tim would come and perform on the show sometimes. So I eventually did get all these sort of shows off the ground, and sort of, I guess that was what, like 3 or 4 years ago now? I guess this September we'll hit our 4-year anniversary. Mm-hmm. But I was podcasting back when most people did not know what they were. Before Serial, which was the big blockbuster show that brought podcasting into the mainstream consciousness. Before that happened, I mean, I remember in my early days of podcasting, a big question was, will we ever be able to sell advertising? Will there ever be enough podcast listeners to where people can make a living doing podcasting? That was a sincere, like, major question in the podcasting scene. I remember a big one when I was coming up was Comedy Bang Bang. Comedy Bang Bang from Scott Aukerman was a really big deal. And that was also the show that sort of answered a very big question that a lot of us in the improv comedy world were talking about, which is, we were in this like sort of hotbox creative scene of all these extremely smart and talented and prolific people that were making a lot of crap, a lot of trash, but also a lot of wonderful stuff. But the nature of improv, live improv comedy, is it just sort of effervesces into the atmosphere and then vanishes. And a lot of us were talking, well, how do you make this stay? Like, how do you capture this energy and what's fun? And people would try to video it and it wouldn't work. People would try to use it to make certain things. The UCB themselves, the 4 founders of the theater, made like a DVD of improv sets, and it didn't end up doing very well. It was a big question of like, how do you capture what we find so engaging about this? And to my mind, listening to Comedy Bang Bang, it was very obvious, like audio. Like you can, if you get people in a studio recording into mics, you can capture some of that electricity of it that for some reason just didn't quite work in video. And of course, we knew this for a long, long time, and that's what radio DJs are doing, right? The drive time DJs are just hanging out, being friends on microphones. It works. It's a format people like. Yeah.
It's a great format, and what do you think specifically when it comes to shows like yours, like narrative podcast? What do you think makes audio such a compelling medium to tell these stories in?
There is something about audio that is much more intimate and internal than video. I mean, you can guess why. Most people will say it's because you experience it in your head. It's the same way how reading can feel more intimate than seeing something happen outside of yourself, is you're using your parts of yourself to build more of it because so much of it is missing. So whereas video, you're locked into this picture, right? The imagination is less active because you're given the answer by the video and you're locked into this image that's being given to you. Audio and prose allow you to bring much more of yourself to the work. And so when the work works, when it lands, when it's good, you feel like you're involved in it in a much more serious way. And I would argue you are, So from an art standpoint, you can achieve emotions and intimacy in audio that's very difficult with film and video and things like that. And then from a production standpoint, oh baby, I mean, it's great. I mean, I can make a show that feels emotionally like you're watching a Steven Spielberg, like a climax of a good Indiana Jones movie, like a really great action adventure movie for 1/1,000,000th, literally 1/1,000,000th of the price.
Yes. And let's talk about that for a second. Because it's great to talk about the art and the feelings and it's so good, but we live in a world of cold hard cash.
Hard cash, baby.
And I want to ask about that because do you think that Patreon and like consumer funded content production is the future of entertainment?
It could be. I don't think we're going to see that take over completely because the centers of capital within the entertainment industry are so concentrated and so powerful. They'll probably always find room for themselves in public life. Disney's not going anywhere. They just have too many resources. And what it really comes down to is, what deal do creators want?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a young creator, do I want to risk it all and make a thing and then hope it sells in the independent sphere? Or do I want to take a bunch of money up front for security and work for one of the big capitalist enterprises? And I think we're going to see a mix of those two. As always, I think that what we will see in our lifetimes, as long as the technological infrastructure is there to support it, is hopefully an increase in independent work and independent culture. I think there's a good argument to be made for that. Ever since the dawn of the internet, it's a big democratizing force in cultural production. So I think we'll see things more independent and more sustainable. Independent avenues will open up to people. But I don't think we're gonna lose Marvel anytime soon.
Oh well, what a shame.
I don't know. I'll tell you this. Listen, they're the cultural Death Star. They will just come and destroy whatever small thing gets in their way. But at the same time, there are some types of art that you can only make if you have $1 billion in the bank.
Absolutely, right? Like as much as James Cameron loves to talk about how good Avatar is, it was pretty good.
It's pretty great, man.
Yeah.
I'm watching, spoiler alert for Avatar 2, The Way of Water, but I'm watching that whale. I'm watching a pacifist whale have a crisis of conscience about violence. That's the best scene I've ever seen. I'm like cheering in the theater, standing up, clapping. That was my Captain America comes back onto screen moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can fund that kind of technological project with independent means. So we're probably going to see a mix of both, as we always have, really.
For sure. But I want to just have you give me just a brief rundown of the various shows that you guys do at Fortunate Horse, and sort of what they mean to you, because they're wildly different shows from what I've heard, right? I have sadly only gotten to hear a couple episodes because there's only so many hours in the day, but...
Well, that's very much by design. I mean, we're not interested in repeating ourselves. I don't, I'll leave that up to the big capitalist corporations that just want to churn out, eyeballs to dollars. I'm much more interested in giving creative people and artists a vehicle to sort of sustainably make their thing. So so our shows are very different. I mean, first of all, you've got our most recent show, right? Worlds Beyond Number. This big thing. I mean, we were in the top 40 of, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. I never thought this would happen. It was in the top 20 podcasts on Spotify the other day. It's a lot of people listening to it. It's just
well
incredible.
Deserved, might I say.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, the cast they've been working for years to build up that kind of trust with people. So, more power to them, I say. Worlds Beyond Number is very much like a sincere fantasy, not to say it's not funny, it's funny, a sincere fantasy epic in the style of the books that you would sneak and read under the covers when you were 12, the fantasy epics that you would just look for the next book, the big movies that really blew you away when you were a kid. We really take Miyazaki films and Studio Ghibli movies as a touchstone. These wonderful supernatural worlds that are grounded in these just lovable characters, and we experience these big fantasy worlds through their eyes. I mean, that's what we're going for, and get to give Brennan this chance to build his giant fantasy setting epic, his Middle Earth. So that's that kind of show. Then you have Fun City. Fun City takes place in New York City 100 years from now, where most of the city is underwater from climate change. The world is ruled by these sort of high-tech corporate dystopias, but everything also sucks. That's the show that lets me make a lot of jokes about email. And that is the show where we get to joke. Really, Fun City is a political commentary about modern corporate and political and tech culture, told through this like crime noir, big mystery detective story with a gang that lives sort of on the outside of the law. Classic Shadowrun story. But we try to get away from the crunchiness of the Shadowrun rules and really focus on characters and story.
It's very fun.
Yeah. Rude Tales is comedy forward. That is a comedy show.
Yes.
And yes, our logo does have a farting goblin on it. However, I would say that the sense of humor is more surreal and character based than, just like dick and fart jokes. I saw someone call the DM for that game is Branson Reese, who also draws the Swan Boy webcomic and of course makes Swan Boy on the FX network. And I saw someone call him a punk Terry Pratchett, which I think is pretty fitting. I mean, the Rude Tales world is very Discworld-esque, and Branson has an edge to him that just makes his jokes and his worldview completely unique, and the characters are fantastic. I mean, there are characters on this show, player characters, that the fandom will have arguments about on whether they are the greatest character in fiction or an abomination that must be destroyed and the most annoying thing that's ever. I would urge your viewers to go and listen and make their own minds up.
I mean, that's how you know you have a great character, right? If
I would argue, yes. I would argue
so far. Absolutely.
And that's a big fantasy epic as well. So it follows this ragtag group of students at this magical university. In episode 1, the university vanishes and it sends them off on a road trip, very much an Odyssey-esque style, where they have to go all over the world of Cordelia and then return. It's just the insane NPCs they meet along the way is a big thrust of what makes that show a lot of fun. And then we have those Stars of Space, which is legally distinct from Star Trek, owned by Paramount Pictures. It's about a crew of a starship in an organization called the Vanguard, and the crew goes on crazy space missions every week. And that one's fun because it's episodic. You don't have to get involved in this grand 100 episode narrative, and the cast changes who they play. So the crew of the ship, the Cavalier, the name of the ship is the CSS Cavalier. The crew of the Cavalier is hundreds of people, but the cast is only 7 of us. So every episode, one of us will play one of the crew members in their stable. I play Baron Baudelaire, who's sort of a Quark figure who, runs the bar on Deep Space Nine. So he sort of runs like the bar. And I also play Legs Lovelace, who's the hotshot ship's pilot. And that show is based on lasers and feelings. So it's a very light, very, very light sort of show. So those are the 4 shows we have out now. And I think that they're, all pretty different in their way. Yeah.
They're great shows. Yeah. I mean, even though Rude Tales of Magic and Worlds Beyond Number are both fantasy epic, they feel very different and they feel very unique to themselves.
Oh, very.
I'll say my greatest praise that I can give for a show or specifically a podcast is that I sat down to, for my research, I sat down to listen to all of these shows, and within the first 10 minutes of episode 1 of Rude Tales of Magic, I was giggling and laughing and being like, this is funny.
Good. We love to hear it. I mean, listen, I do not work with people that I don't think are incredibly talented. And the jokes, the comedy that crew can make up on the spot is, in my opinion, unparalleled. And to be clear, I am not on Rude Tales of Magic. I am the producer of Rude Tales. I am not on it, so I'm allowed to talk about how talented the cast is, and I think that they're geniuses.
Well, that's actually one of the questions that I wanted to get into, which is that in your different shows on the network, sometimes you're in it, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're producing, sometimes you're talking. What's the process when you guys make a show? What's the we have these talented people who want to make a thing. We have me and the rest of the Fortunate Horse crew. Who's going in? Who's producing? Who's doing what?
It's different every time. it's different every time. When Mike Rugnetta and I, who we co-DM Fun City, so he kind of plays the world and the rules, and I role play the villains. So we should have this co-DM set up. We were coming up with that idea for the show, and that was an idea we came up with in the pitch process. And when we looked at casting, we were like, okay, let's get a mix of people who are performers, comedians, and let's get a mix of people that are not performers, but like have some talent or specialization in other fields. So Fun City, you've got an improv comic doing scenes with a literal neuroscientist, which is fantastic. That's a great thing to have on a sci-fi show, is an actual brain scientist on staff. You can ask questions to. It's very, very fun. But yeah, Shannon Odell on that show, she's a PhD in neuroscience. So we wanted to go for variety in the performers on that one. Whereas Rude Tales is very much like Branson, the DM, had been running a home game with those folks for a long time, and he knew them through doing improv at the Magnet Theater, and so we knew that they were, and I've discovered one of the best things you can find in casting these shows is chemistry at the table. And they already had chemistry, they already had the chops, so he was like, let's bring them on. And I had never even met most of that cast, but I just trust Tim and Branson so much, who I knew first, that I was like, yeah, bring them in. And thank God they did. It's a good group of folks. And then we were making Rude Tales of Magic, and Joe Lepore, who's the cast member in Rude Tales, did a couple of premium episodes, like bonus stuff for behind the Patreon. He ran 2 games of Lasers and Feelings, and we had the best time. It was so much fun. Joe gets the Star Trek genre. He gets the vibe so well. And this is one thing that you are always looking for when you're casting these shows. People that understand the genre so well, they can play in it without thinking very hard. That is like a superpower for making these shows. And Joe really got Star Trek in that genre, and we loved doing it. So it was a very natural idea of, well, could this be its own show? And could we use it to sort of make it a playground for the cast so we can play dozens of different people? And then Worlds Beyond Number, of course, I mean, that, we've talked about that so much in public and on a bunch of different shows, but I knew Brennan from playing D&D and doing comedy back when he lived in New York. And while I was building Fortune Horse back in New York, he was in LA building Dimension 20 and met all these incredible people. And so when, they got this sort of bug in their ear about making a podcast, it was a natural fit. It was perfect.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I saw on the Q&A on the Patreon, there was like 50 likes on a question that was like, I'm not sure Taylor isn't Brennan, which was
well, listen, so we just released our first post-show chat.
Yes.
And in editing it, I discovered that Brennan and I have very similar voices. I mean, we could be brothers, we could be cousins.
Yes.
That happens a lot. We're both, we both come from sort of Scotch-Irish trash that was kicked out of America at some point. Proud heritage of these big potato-headed goofballs. And so, yeah, I guess we come from the same stock, and I fully forgive listeners that can't tell us apart. I'll try to turn up my Southern accent real high to differentiate in future episodes.
Fantastic. I mean, yes, I'm very lucky, I feel, that I chose to do this I guess because, thank God for the time difference, I guess, in the evening, so that I had time to listen to the Q&A, so that I didn't get repeat questions.
It's fun. We got a ton of questions. The patrons have been incredible so far. It's just, I feel like the luckiest guy in the world to have like this enormous community of people that are so positive. And what's cool about this, and this is great with the other Fortunate Horse shows as well, is something we've seen, is that the fan base, they're not just listening, they're not just hearing, they're not just talking about it, they're so generative. Like, they make stuff. They're posting stuff on 803. They're making incredible fan art. We've seen plushies. I mean, I know that's old hat for anyone who knows about, like, nerd content on the internet stuff, but it still feels like it's not just you're throwing something out in the world and people are eating it. It's it's very much this like generative community that's growing things all the time.
Yes.
And that feels so different from other kinds of work.
Actual play fans are very engaged in their hobby.
Yes. Yeah.
Duh, right?
Yeah.
So,
but it's just so cool. I don't think I'll ever get tired of it.
Yes. Me neither. I have a bit of a question that's regarding your involvement as well, because you talked about just before about what shows are you in, what shows are you not, but for the shows that you're not on as like a person who speaks, but just in the shadows in the milk tub, do you come up with ideas and suggestions for content during recording, or do you just like,
sure,
all right, let the talent take the reins?
Pitching, like working on story ideas and pitching changes or anything like that with my DMs is my number one favorite part of the job. If I awesome. Could only pick one thing I do to keep, if I had to farm out the editing, which I like to do, if I had to farm out the music, I would hate to do it. But if I got to keep pitching and working on story with my DMs, that is the one thing I'd keep. I treasure that more than anything else in the world. That is just pure joy for me. So yes, but it's a delicate dance. It's a very, very delicate dance because, and I've learned the hard way, we can talk about things and pitch things, but they have to lead the way. When you're in there improvising at a table with 3 to 7 other people, the world you're making, the characters you're playing, they have to match your instincts and your gut, regardless of what the guy in the booth thinks. To DM successfully, the DM has to lead with their instincts and their values, or else it feels fake, or like they lose the path. They don't know what to do. It's like trying to dance to a beat you can't hear. What's great about this medium is that because it is improvisational, you get a sense of who these people really are. That's what's great about improv, is when it's really good, it strips away the conscious mind, right? So if you were to go into the old UCB theater school where they taught thousands of people all this improv stuff, you go in there and on the wall is their motto, which is don't think. Right. And that comes from a principle in improv education where they tell you, like, if you sit there and think about what to say, it's going to sound goofy and fake and dumb and you'll waste a lot of time. Go with your instincts, go with your gut, let your id come out to play. And that sort of specificity, even if it feels strange, is actually the thing that is going to resonate with people the most. And so in this genre, in the AP or narrative play, that is really a big part of the secret sauce. Is letting people improvise to the place where something surprising even to them comes out and happens. And so when I'm working with my DMs on story stuff, I have to be very careful because I can pitch an idea, I can press for things, I can ask hard questions, but at the end of the day, what happens at the table has to come from their heart and their stomach and their guts. It has to fit with them. So while we get to play, I also get to sort of release it and be like, all right, now go do whatever you want at the table. And even before we get to the table, the DMs has to be in charge. I've never, the only thing I've ever demanded from one of my game masters is like, retake that line because the mic blew out or something. Yeah. I can't imagine like dictating story stuff or demanding anything. It's very much like being an assistant writer in a writer's room and just acting as sort of a wall they can bounce ideas off of. But I love it. It's my favorite part of the job.
So you've never had like a disagreement?
Oh, absolutely. Disagree all the time. Creative people working together. If you're not disagreeing, something's wrong. I mean, you have to test the limits. You gotta play with the edges. No, you can have disagreements all the time, but no, like in the way we work our shows specifically, the DM has to win those fights. Has to.
Yeah. So you solve it by basically not giving up, but stepping back. If there's...
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, like. They have to feel like it's in their bones. It fits with their instincts. So I mean, and I have fucked up. Like we have. I'm not gonna get into specifics to save my own hide. But there've been there have been there was one particular circumstance where it's like, this idea is going to work. I swear to God, if we use this, it'll let us do this and this in the story, and it'll be fantastic. And I really convinced them against their judgment, like, this is the way to go. And then we got to the table, and it falls flat. It doesn't work because it's like trying to force like an inch into a centimeter. It's just two systems that don't. It has to be natural. It has to come from their instincts and their subconscious, I guess.
And there's a lot of actual play shows out there.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of content.
There's a lot of content in general.
There's a lot. How many wrestling podcasts are there? How many political podcasts are there?
More than I could think of.
More than this is, I hear this all the time. I remember back when the internet first was really kicking off, and everyone complained about how there were too many websites, and then everyone complained about how there were too many blogs, and then everyone complained about how there were too many Twitter accounts, and then everybody complained about how there were too many social media platforms, too many podcasts, too many books, blah 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 blah. It's all bullshit. There's no too many anything.
Yes.
That's like saying there's too many people. I don't buy it. As far as like, I'm sorry, I talked right over your question. What's the
Totally
actual
fine.
question, Jacob?
Hey,
I'm sorry.
Listen, for my sake, you can keep rambling as long as you want. That's I love that. But no, the question is basically about collaboration between shows, right? Because there's a lot of shows. You even have, right, like 4 shows now. Do you ever sit down and think about like, oh, well, this show is somewhat similar to our show. We should try and do something with them or something like that?
No, but only for scheduling purposes. If I had a team of 10 people, I'd want to be doing collaborations with other shows and other people all the time. It is.
Yeah.
The reason we don't do that is purely bandwidth and logistical issues. It's just like, well, that would require 150 emails, which I don't have time for.
Sadly, we don't have unlimited time.
Yeah, you know,
I
and
wish.
like scheduling stuff between groups of people like that. Any modern internet creator will tell you that is the biggest time suck you can imagine.
Yes, I mean,
it's just hard. It's hard.
I know absolutely what you're talking about. I mean, living here in Europe and having my show be primarily around people who live in America, it's find those times. But
and you add a 7-person cast plus a 5-person cast? No way.
Plus producers, plus people. Yes, absolutely, yeah. And I get it for sure. So we're not gonna see any Will's Beyond Number Root Tales of Magic collab in the future.
Well, we kind of already did, because Brennan guested on episode 16 of Rude Tales. I mean, spoiler for Rude Tales, but it is. I think it's any if you Google the show, I think because we've only had 2 episodes with guests on Rude Tales of Magic, and he was one of them. And I think one of our best episodes.
Awesome. Specific questions about Worlds Beyond Number. I, along with every other Patreon member, woke up one morning on March 1st and saw 8 episodes of the Children's Adventure dumped right on the Patreon feeds. Yep. What is the thought process behind, like, oh, we could drip feed these for, like, content, or, nah, we're just gonna slam it on the table?
It was 2 things. The first thing was our philosophy about the Patreon is we want to be the best deal on the internet. We want to have, start with this one simple low tier, and we want to give people as much as we possibly can. That is our philosophy. We sat down and we're like, all right, we're going to do a Patreon. How are we going to do it? What's our guiding philosophy for this? Be the best deal. Give the most and ask the least. Secondly, we wanted people. We didn't want to have 2 parallel campaigns running at the same time in people's brains, in people's minds. So we were like, the only way to do that, right? Because if we release them both in drips, then you have people experiencing the children's campaign at the same time as the adult campaign, which narratively could be very interesting. But it's asking a lot for people to understand, and it's asking a lot for us to respond to, and it's just asking a lot. So we thought, let's just give people the entire children's campaign so they can listen to that if they want to first, and then focus on the main campaign that's going to run for years. To keep it simple, easier to understand, less confusing for the first few months. Because otherwise, you would see people talking about this character doing a thing, and you wouldn't know, is that in the most recent episode or is that the children's adventure? Very, very confusing. So we thought, no, let's silo it away and let's just give it in one. It's like, those, those Christmas commercials where the husband or wife will buy a car for the other person and there's like a big novelty bow on it. That's what we wanted to do. Just a gift that would blow people's minds right out of the gate.
And it did. Clearly,
Good,
right?
good.
Like there's like 200 comments on each episode and they're all like, wow, this is crazy. And it's a great way to generate hype as well, right? Because not a lot of podcasts are dropping 8 episodes on the first day.
And I won't again. Let me tell you, that is the last time I'll be putting out that much content.
You heard it here first, folks. Never again.
No.
So we briefly touched on the problem with guests and scheduling and all that jazz, but also that it's a wonderful thing and you would want to if you could. And there was a small hinting at it during the Q&A you had that released earlier. But could you give any sort of cryptic message about guests that are coming or not coming?
Oh, we don't know. None are booked.
None are booked. Okay.
No.
So it's all speculative for now.
We are having so much fun doing what we're doing right now. There is no desire to hurry up and do something else.
Absolutely.
I wish I could communicate to you how I have worked on projects. No Fortune Horse project, but I've worked on creative projects where the people involved are like, well, I told them I would do this, so here I am, at the call time, and we're going to do it. I've seen projects for people just doing it for the money. The cast of Worlds Beyond Number, I've never seen people so giddy to work on a thing. They get so excited about these characters. They get so excited to record. It is like the children. It is like I am herding children. It is like I'm a summer camp counselor again, and they're just bouncing off the walls. They're having so much fun. They're having so much fun focusing on the show right now. We haven't even. I'm a yes. I'm like, let's get this person. Let's play this game. And they're just like, all I can think about is the world of Amora. All I can think about is Ami. All I can think about is Suvi. It has been going so well, and I don't mean business wise. I mean creatively for the cast. They are having so much fun. It would be cruel to make them jump into another favorite character right now. However, I will say this: that eventually, I don't want to say that they'll get bored with the world, because that's not where this is going at all. But eventually, I think once we get the rhythm and pace of the production and release cycle not under control, but normalized, because we're still early days. We launched a week ago. This is still very new. I think once we get the schedule more down pat, I think then we'll see some logistical openings where we can bring in people and add new recording sessions, and that's when I'm really going to start pressing let's get some more stuff in. But we're very eager to use the Worlds Beyond Number feed and the Patreon feed and the public feed as a playground for whatever we want to do. So that stuff is coming, but right now we're just, we're enjoying the salad too much.
You heard it here first. Hard promise from Taylor Moore that there will be guests and salad is good.
Yeah, there'll be guests.
And salad's good. The future campaigns that'll be happening when Brennan switches out of the hot seat and one of the other 3 switches in, will those be Umora, or will those be Worlds Beyond Number, as in a whole new place, whole new world?
Oh, that is such a huge question. I definitely well, who knows what the future holds? But I would be stunned if like our first game outside of The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One also took place in Umora, which is the world, you know, that we're currently in. I would be really surprised if we stayed in the same world for the first like new game, but also if someone came up with a good idea and that's the way it went. Maybe that is what we do. I don't know.
It's still young, still fresh.
They're gonna want a flavor. They're gonna want some different flavor, I think.
They're gonna want to put a different dressing on this salad, and it's gonna.
yeah. They're gonna no. I suspect I don't know. I can't. No promises, but I suspect just from human nature that like when we go different, we'll go different in a big way.
The people want hard, fast promises about specific content. Yeah. No. Of course not. But yes, awesome to hear that the players are having and Brendan as well is having so much fun.
Yeah.
Your favorite, without spoiling too much, or with, I won't tell. But
Sure.
Your favorite moment from an upcoming episode of What's Beyond.
Oh boy. My favorite moment from an upcoming episode.
What's in store for us?
There is the Ursulon's reveal that was shared in the previews is pretty great. I think that's a really wonderful moment. We just recorded something that I think is really fantastic. No, I want to. There's an even earlier moment. Okay. Okay, I gotta be careful here because this is. No, Taylor, shut up! Don't say anything else.
No, Taylor, tell me everything.
My truly favorite moment is so tied in 1,000 different ways to spoilers in every direction that even to tell you when or what it is would blow your mind. And honestly, and really, it would spoil the next 100 episodes. That's how big it is. If I even tell you what it is, it would ruin like the whole show. So let me think about something that's a bit smaller stakes.
In anticipation.
I will say that every time the characters substantially interact with the spirit world is one of my favorite moments. Both as a producer who gets to like that's the coolest sound design, like the coolest music. I feel that's what I enjoy the most is that spirit stuff. But I think that also just like narratively and for world building, like brushing up against the spirit world, which is such a big part of the setting, is always so interesting. And there's a moment in the first sort of major arc of the show, which in recording, we're kind of almost towards the end of maybe, where they interact with a very large element that I think is going to be very cool for listeners. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say. You gotta be careful. This is dangerous to me. This is very dangerous. I'm gonna get Bria's gonna come to my house and just like
just gonna throw apples at you.
One major punch right to the solar plexus. I can't talk anymore because you gotta understand, like, they're recording it and I'm listening to it. I'm a fan. Like, I'm just a listener like everybody else.
Well, then that's why exactly you understand my position here, Taylor. You understand that I have to try to nickel and dime you for every little squeeze of.
I know. I get to live the dream because I get to hear them play the game, and then I like sit Brendan down and be like, all right, so let's talk about what actually is going on. And
I'm so jealous.
Because I have to know. I have to be behind the screen, right? So like I was saying earlier, like it would be disaster to like dictate to a DM or even try rude, to dictate to a DM who I specifically cast because they are smarter at me in that way. But one thing that has to be the case is I have to be in on everything, because in order to build this sort of gestalt artistic thing that we are creating, I need to know, like, does this person get a spooky music cue or stuff like that? You know, is this character going to return? Or is this person's intentions good or bad? Because that can influence the edit and the score and the design. So I have to be behind the screen as a viewer as well, which is great.
So jealous. But one sort of out of left field, maybe not really, kind of question that there was something truly insane said on the fireside earlier.
All right, hit me with it. Yeah.
Where I believe it was Erica who said that you learned to compose music for the show.
Yeah. So a year ago, they were talking about starting the show, and I was like, well, I want to do that. And this is too important to use canned music. We have to go with, there has to be original music. So I'll just learn how to do that.
Right, but and that was it. And then you sat down and you just did it.
Yeah. Oh, it was hard as hell. It was extremely difficult. A lot of sleepless nights practicing and like reading books, watching so many videos. I took a lot of online classes and just practiced a lot. And I actually used my other shows as practice. So if you go back and start listening to Rude Tales, the episodes of Rude Tales that were coming out early last year, you can hear the music change, where I would go from, you know, classical music whose composition was in the public domain. I would start to introduce original music. And now if you listen to Rude Tales, it's 90% original music. We've sort of and I sort of used Rude Tales as being the producer for that show as a training ground to like learn how it works and everything. And let me tell you, if you're learning a new skill, a great trick to play on yourself is deadlines. So to have like, this podcast has got to come out, you've got to write something right now, you better learn how to do it.
Yes.
It's a great motivator.
Well, I mean, so impressed with the scoring and the audio
thank you so much.
for...
It's all tricks. Let me tell you something about music. It's all tricks. It's just magic. It's very much like stage magic, where you could learn a few basic tricks and it's just like a skeleton key to people's emotions. It is also incredibly wonderful. Like, yes. I wish I had done this earlier in my life, but like, I took on the challenge because I thought that it would make me a better producer, so I could serve my shows better, and it has become this really important source of meaning, in my life. I would recommend, if anyone is like on the fence about it, get a little MIDI keyboard and just go to town. I mean, like, there's same as with everything else, you can learn a lot just from free YouTube videos, getting started, and it rules. It's so much fun to make.
Well, folks, that's the show. Taylor, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast.
Jacob, thank you so much for having me.
Hilarious person. I would love to talk to you again sometime. I feel like you have you're a very, very fun and unique perspective on this awesome industry that we are all mega fans of.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm honestly glad that it's just getting the attention it is, because I just think it's a cool thing to be working on. It's a cool place.
So thank you so much for coming on.
Happy to be here.
And thank you everyone for watching, and leave a like, comment what you want to see in a future episode, and thank you.